When the marble floor of Maitama Crest gleamed like heaven, nobody saw the dirt hiding in one woman's heart. In that luxury apartment, high above Abuja, a trembling mother knelt with a rag in her hand trying to polish her gratitude into something her son's wife could respect. But kindness can be mistaken for weakness, and humility often bleeds in silence. That afternoon, a slap shattered the quiet. A silver bucket rolled across the floor, spilling not just water but years of sacrifice. From the corner of the ceiling, a camera blinked, a cold, unblinking witness that would later speak louder than any prayer. Down by Jabi waterfront, people still say the floor of that house was spotless, but its light turned cold forever. Before we begin this story, tell us, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now in your city? Don't forget to subscribe to African Tales for more stories that touch the soul and remind us no home shines brighter than a heart cleaned by love. The afternoon sun of Abuja poured through the tall glass windows of Maitama Crest residences, scattering golden light across the marble floor like shards of a promise. The city outside hummed faintly distant horns, echoes of construction, the restless rhythm of ambition. Inside apartment 23B, the silence was so perfect it could break. Then came a sound, the soft, careful squeak of a rag against marble. Mama Ijeoma, dressed in her faded Ankara wrapper and headscarf, moved slowly on her knees. Her wrists trembled, but her strokes were precise, each one filled with the same tenderness she used when feeding her son decades ago by the smoky fire of Jabi waterfront. She had come to this house not to rest, but to feel close to her son's success. The tiles gleamed, and she smiled, whispering, "If my Tunde comes home and sees it clean, maybe he'll smile too." Behind her, heels clicked sharply. Chioma Eze Tunde's wife stood at the bedroom doorway, her silk robe brushing the floor. Her hair was pinned high, her nails long and red like anger itself. For a heartbeat, she said nothing, just stared, disbelief clouding her face. Then her voice sliced the air. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" Mama turned startled. "Ah, my daughter, good afternoon. I was just cleaning this corner." The stain was small, but small Chioma's laugh was dry. "This isn't some river shack in Jabi. We have a cleaner who comes every Monday. You don't have to crawl around my floor." Mama bowed her head slightly, her voice gentle. "It's just habit, my dear. At home, when Tunde went to work, I used to tidy his table. It's how I show love." Chioma folded her arms. "Love. This is not love. It's humiliation. Do you know how it looks when the building staff see you scrubbing like a maid? My friends could visit any moment." "What do you want them to think of me?" The words stung, but Mama smiled faintly, trying to make peace. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to shame anyone. I just wanted your home to feel warm." Chioma cut her off with a sharp motion. "This is my home. You're only visiting." From the ceiling corner, a tiny red light blinked, the security camera Tunde had installed for safety. It watched silent and neutral as the gap between two women widened like a crack in the marble. Mama picked up her bucket slowly. "Let me finish this spot and I'll stop." Chioma's lips tightened. "Did you not hear me? Leave it. You're making everything smell like smoke." Mama paused, eyes glistening. "Smoke, yes, smoke, poverty smoke. That scent follows you everywhere." The insult landed like a slap before the slap itself came. A moment later, the real one exploded. Chioma's hand swung across Mama's cheek sharp, sudden echoing through the spotless room. The old woman stumbled, the rag slipping from her grasp. The bucket tipped, water spilling and spreading, reflecting both women's faces, one proud, one broken. "Mama?" she whispered in disbelief. Her palm trembling, but pride forced her chin higher. "I told you not to touch anything." Mama's body shook, but her voice stayed soft. "My child, you can scrub a floor as many times as you want, but if your heart is dirty, no water can make it clean." Chioma froze. Something flickered in her eyes, shame, anger, confusion, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. She turned away, muttering, "You've lost your mind." The room was quiet except for the drip of water into the bucket's shadow. From outside, faint thunder rolled over Abuja's skyline, a storm gathering above the city of glass. At that moment, Mr. Namdi, the security guard, walked past the corridor. He paused, hearing muffled voices through the thick door. He frowned. He had seen the older woman arrive days ago, sweet, polite, always greeting everyone. But today something in the air felt wrong. He considered knocking, then hesitated. "Not my business," he thought. "Madame Chioma doesn't like interference." He walked on, leaving behind a silence that was no longer peaceful. Mama wiped her eyes, then her hands, trying to stand. Her knees creaked with pain. "I'm sorry, my daughter. I will go and rest." Chioma sighed, exasperated. Do that, and please stay out of the living room. Mama turned toward the small guest room, the one at the far end of the corridor. As she walked, she touched the walls gently, as if blessing the house that did not want her. The walls were cold, lifeless, and her palms came away dry, no warmth to cling to. When she reached the door, she looked back once. Chioma had already turned away, checking her reflection in the mirror, adjusting her hair as if nothing had happened. For a second, Mama almost spoke again, wanted to say she forgave her, but the words never found breath. She closed the door softly behind her. Minutes later, Tunde Okafor's phone buzzed in his office at the international firm downtown. A notification flashed from the home security app, motion detected in living room, 2:47 p.m. He barely noticed. His meeting was about to start. Investors were waiting. He swiped it away. Back at Maitama Crest, the marble was dry again. The house looked perfect, just as Chioma liked it. But perfection had a price, it always did. As the afternoon stretched on the sun, tilted flooding the apartment in honey-colored light, Chioma sat on the couch, sipping iced coffee, scrolling through social media posts of her friends at Dubai brunches. Somewhere in the guest room, Mama whispered a prayer. Lord, don't let my heart grow bitter. Let me still love her as my own. Her words floated into the still air and disappeared unheard. The camera's red light blinked once more. Steady, patient, remembering. Outside, clouds began to gather over Abuja's skyline. Rain tapped faintly against the windows. And as thunder rumbled in the distance, somewhere between the drip of the last water drop and the hum of the air conditioner, fate quietly took its first breath. By evening, Tunde would come home to two women sitting in separate rooms, divided not by walls but by something far thicker silence, the kind that can drown love faster than any storm. He would smile tired from work, unaware that the first crack had already formed in his perfect life. And in the ceiling corner, the camera waited, watching, recording, remembering every flicker of light and every shadow that would soon turn into truth. The morning sun over Jabi waterfront always rose gently like a mother brushing sleep from her child's face. The air smelled of roasted corn and charcoal smoke. The wooden canoes creaked against each other where the fishermen had tied them before dawn. Between the narrow lanes of the settlement, voices mingled, children, laughing vendors, calling radios, humming faint songs of hope. It was here in this fragile pocket of Abuja that Mama Ijeoma built a world out of love and poverty. Her small shack stood near the water's edge, its tin roof patched with bits of aluminum. Every morning she knelt by her charcoal stove, stirring corn porridge in a dented aluminum pot. The smoke curled around her like a shawl. She hummed old hymns as she worked, sometimes coughing softly, then smiling again, as if the sound itself was prayer. The porridge wasn't much, just cornmeal, condensed milk, and sugar, but to the workers of Jabi, it was comfort in a bowl. At dawn, young Tunde Okafor would wake to the smell of that porridge. He was 16, then thin as a bamboo reed, with eyes too serious for his age. His school uniform hung loose, its collar frayed. He'd wash his face with cold water from a plastic bowl, look into a cracked mirror nailed to the wall, and straighten his tie as if preparing for battle. Mama, he'd call softly, you haven't eaten. I'm full when you are my son, she'd answer, handing him a steaming bowl. It was their ritual, that small lie of love told every morning. Sometimes when the neighbors teased her, Ijeoma, you'll starve for that boy, she'd laugh and reply, better hunger than a son who forgets the taste of kindness. After he left for school, she'd sit by the doorway, mending torn clothes for people in the neighborhood. Every stitch carried a prayer. Every coin earned went into a small metal tin box tucked beneath her mat, a box Auntie Bisi had given her years ago. Keep it, Bisi had said, pressing it into her hand, for the day your son flies too high. Inside, write a message only a mother's heart can write. One day he'll need it to find the ground again. That night, after the settlement fell silent and the wind rustled through the palm leaves, Mama opened the tin box and slipped a folded paper inside. Her handwriting was shaky but strong. Never forget the sound of your mother's hands. Then she closed it, kissed it once, and hid it beneath her mat again. Years passed. Abuja's skyline grew taller while the tin roofs of Jabi rusted thinner. Yet Tunde's name became whispered pride among the locals. He studied under lantern light, borrowed books from church libraries, and refused to give up. When he received the letter of admission, full scholarship to University of Abuja, he could barely breathe. Mama, he said, holding the letter with trembling hands, we did it. She couldn't read it all, but she understood the joy on his face. She hugged him tight, whispering, the road is long, my son, but it will lead you somewhere bright. That night, she brought out her hidden savings, a handful of wrinkled Naira notes tied with thread. Let's go to the market tomorrow, she said. You must look like a man of destiny. In the bustling market of Utako, they searched through piles of used clothes. She picked up a gray vest, old but clean, and held it against his chest. This one, it will make you look like someone who belongs in the city. He laughed softly. Mama, it's too big. Then grow into it, she said, smiling. The next morning, as Tunde boarded the bus to campus, she pressed something into his palm, a small wrapped bundle containing a spoon, a rag, and the metal bowl he'd always eaten from. Keep them, she said. They're nothing fancy, but they'll remind you that a clean place keeps the mind clear. He hugged her, his voice trembling. I'll call every night, Mama, I promise. And for a while he did. Every evening she'd leave her phone on speaker cooking porridge for late customers while listening to his stories. She didn't understand all the English words, but she understood his laughter. Then the calls grew shorter. I'm busy, Mama. I'll call tomorrow. Then fewer. We have meetings. I'm traveling. She told herself it was fine. A child must chase his own son, she'd say, as long as he doesn't forget the road home. 5 years later, a silver car stopped at her stall by Jabi waterfront. It was Tunde, taller, confident, wearing that same gray vest now perfectly fitted. His smile was tired but proud. Mama, I have a surprise, he said. You're getting married, she teased. He laughed. Maybe someday, but first I want you to come live with me in Maitama. She froze ladle halfway in the pot. Maitama, the rich people's place. He nodded, his eyes glowing. I got promoted. Director for the North region. It's time you live somewhere comfortable. That night she barely slept. She packed her wrappers, her headscarf, the rag, and her old metal bucket. Auntie BC helped fold everything neatly. Remember, BC said, holding her hands, don't lose yourself in their glass world. Keep your heart as clean as your floor. Mama smiled. If the Lord has given my son such blessings, I'll make sure his house stays pure. When they arrived at Maitama Crest Residences, Mama nearly gasped. The building rose like a white crown against the blue sky. The lobby smelled of jasmine and polished wood. A chandelier rained golden light down on the marble floor. This is where you live, she whispered. Tunde grinned shyly. Yes, Mama, and you'll stay with us. Then came Chioma, elegant in a fitted dress, her perfume sharp as her gaze. She smiled politely, shaking Mama's hand. Welcome, Mama, she said, though her eyes barely hid discomfort. It's nice to meet you. Mama, too overwhelmed to notice, smiled wide. Thank you, my daughter. Your home is so clean. Does wind even enter these tall places? Chioma chuckled lightly, already looking at her phone. You'll get used to it. Tunde led his mother to the guest room. White sheets, glass walls, air conditioning humming. Mama sat on the bed, tracing her fingers over the linen. My son, she whispered, this house is too quiet. Even the air has manners. That night, Tunde stood on the balcony, looking out over Abuja's glittering lights. Chioma joined him, leaning against the railing. She's sweet, Chioma said softly, but we'll need to set boundaries. I'm not used to that village energy. Tunde frowned slightly. She just needs time. Chioma sighed. So do I. He nodded, not wanting to argue. In the distance, lightning flashed above the hills. He didn't know it yet, but a different kind of storm was already building inside his home. Down the hallway, Mama couldn't sleep. She opened her small bag, took out the metal tin box, and placed it on the bedside table. The faint reflection of the city lights shimmered on its lid. She touched it gently, whispering a prayer of gratitude. Lord, you've brought my boy high. Don't let the air up here steal his breath. From the living room, she heard Chioma's laughter echo faintly, bright, sharp, foreign. The sound didn't hurt her, but it reminded her that love in this house would not come easily. Still, she believed what she always had. Every clean floor starts with a dirty hand willing to wash it. And as the night wind brushed against the glass of Maitama Crest, Mama Ijeoma drifted into uneasy sleep, dreaming of home, the sound of paddles in Jabi's water, the smell of charcoal, and her son's young voice saying, Mama, I'll never forget the road home. In the corner of the ceiling, a red light blinked once. The camera was on, watching quietly as history, love, and tragedy began to intertwine in the city of marble and glass. Morning at Maitama Crest Residences was a quiet kind of perfection. The sun drifted across Abuja's skyline, bouncing off towers of glass and casting diamonds of light on the marble floor. From outside, the faint hum of the city was softened by distance, like a song played behind closed doors. Inside apartment 23B, every cushion was in its place, every glass sparkled. But beneath that surface of order, the air was colder than it should have been. Mama Ijeoma stood near the window, peering down 23 floors to the wide streets below. Cars looked like toys from up there, the people like moving dots. She turned slowly, her hands folded in front of her, and smiled faintly. This house is so high, she whispered to herself, even the wind has to climb to get in. When Tunde entered the living room already dressed in his navy blue suit, his mother's face lit up. "My son," she said softly, "you look like a man who owns the sky." He chuckled, adjusting his tie. "It's just work, Mama. The company expects us to look professional." "You've come far," she said. "When I think of the days in Jabi when your books smelled of charcoal smoke, God is truly good." Tunde smiled, though something in him flinched when she mentioned Jabi. "Those days are behind us now, Mama. You should rest." "No more market smoke, no more leaking roofs." She nodded, but her gaze lingered on his face. "I'm proud of you, but don't let the roof over your head make you forget the ground beneath your feet." Before he could reply, Chioma entered the room, her perfume filling the air. She wore a cream silk robe and carried a mug of coffee that steamed like pride itself. "Morning, Mama," she said with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good morning, my daughter," Mama replied warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Chioma shrugged. "Well enough. I'm not used to having guests so early. Abuja mornings are my quiet time." Tunde looked between them, sensing the tension simmering beneath their smiles. "Chioma, Mama was just saying how peaceful it is here." "Peaceful," Chioma repeated, setting her cup down. "That's one way to put it." The silence stretched. Mama, ever gentle, broke it first. "I'll make breakfast. You two must eat before work." Chioma's tone was light, but her words carried a chill. "Oh, that's not necessary, Mama. We have a housekeeper for that. You're our guest. Please relax." Mama smiled, bowing slightly. "As you wish." But inside she felt an ache that had nothing to do with age. Later that morning, Tunde kissed his wife on the cheek, hugged his mother, and hurried off to work. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The apartment fell silent again except for the whisper of the air conditioner. Mama looked around. The living room gleamed like a museum, white walls, golden accents, glass everywhere. She reached for her small bag, took out her rag and bucket, and knelt beside the sofa. Old habits tugged at her like invisible strings. "I can't just sit while the dust gathers," she murmured. A mother's hands were made to keep her child's home warm. She dipped the rag in the bucket and began to wipe a faint smudge on the glass table. Each movement was slow, rhythmic, a prayer in motion. As she worked, she hummed softly the same lullaby she used to sing in Jabi when Tunde was small. From the bedroom doorway, Chioma watched silently. At first she said nothing. But as Mama moved from the table to the cabinet, Chioma's face tightened. The sight of the old woman kneeling on the floor made her chest constrict, not with pity, but with something ugly or something she didn't want to name. Finally she spoke. "Mama, what are you doing?" Mama looked up, startled. "Ah, Chioma, I didn't know you were there. Just cleaning this corner. I saw a little dust. We have a maid," Chioma interrupted sharply. "You don't need to clean anything," Mama smiled gently. "Old habits die slowly. Back home, I used to clean Tunde's study every morning before he left for school. It made me feel close to him." Chioma sighed, her patience thinning. "This isn't back home, Mama. This is my Tama Crest. There's no need to crawl on the floor." Mama straightened her back slowly, her knees cracking. "Forgive me, my daughter. I didn't mean to offend you." But Chioma wasn't done. "It's not about offense, it's about boundaries. This isn't a village house where everyone does everything. I worked hard to build a life here, clean, quiet, elegant. Please respect that." Her voice trembled at the edge of anger. The words clean and elegant hung in the air like accusations. Mama said nothing. She simply gathered her rag, her bucket, and walked back toward her room. The faint shuffle of her slippers against marble was the only sound left. When she closed the door, Chioma exhaled shakily. She didn't know why the scene bothered her so much. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear that the past her husband had climbed out of might crawl back in through his mother's hands. She looked around the room again, at the spotless surfaces, the perfect decor, and whispered to herself, "This house must stay bright." But she didn't notice how the brightness had already begun to feel like glare. At the office downtown, Tunde was scrolling through his emails when one caught his eye. The sender, Adaora HR Department. Subject, CSR Program, Elderly Care Outreach Proposal. He clicked it absent-mindedly. The first line read, "We are seeking directors willing to represent the company in a program supporting elderly women in low-income communities. Let us know if you'd be interested." Tunde stared at the screen for a moment. He thought of his mother's hands, how they once scrubbed school uniforms until her knuckles bled. Then he shook the thought away and closed the email. No time for this now, he told himself. At home, Mama sat by the window of her guest room watching the city. She noticed something strange, the way the clouds hung low over Abuja's tall buildings, the way people down below moved so fast as if running from something unseen. She opened her Bible and read quietly, "Better a humble heart in a small house than pride in a palace of glass." That verse stayed with her as she folded her scarf and began to hum again. Evening came. Tunde returned home exhausted. The scent of lavender air freshener filled the room. Chioma greeted him with a kiss and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mama emerged from her room with slow steps, her wrapper neat, her eyes bright with affection. "My son," she said softly, "welcome home. I made stew. Just a small pot in case you were hungry." Chioma stiffened. "You cooked?" Mama nodded innocently. "Yes, I used the small pot in the corner. I hope it's not a problem." Chioma forced a smile. "Of course not, Mama. But next time please let the maid handle that." Tunde, caught in the middle, glanced between them. "It's fine," he said. "Mama just wanted to help." "Help?" Chioma's voice cracked slightly. "Or take over my kitchen," Chioma, Tunde said quietly, "please." But she turned away muttering, "Some people don't know when to stop." Mama stood still, the pot of stew trembling in her hands. Then she smiled again, small, tired, forgiving. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll just keep it warm for tomorrow." Tunde placed a hand on her shoulder, but the warmth between them had cooled. He didn't know which hurt more, the sharpness in his wife's tone or the quiet resignation in his mother's eyes. Later that night, while the city lights of Abuja blinked across the horizon, Mama lay awake. She listened to the faint laughter from the next room. Tunde and Chioma watching a late-night show. It was a laughter that used to belong to her. She turned toward the small tin box on her bedside table and whispered, "Lord, keep his heart soft. Don't let this house turn him to stone." Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the glass. From the ceiling corner, the red light of the security camera blinked once, still watching, still waiting. In that perfect air-conditioned silence, something invisible began to crack. Morning in Abuja broke with a faint orange light spilling through the curtains of Maitama Crest residences. The air smelled faintly of rain from the night before, fresh, almost forgiving. In apartment 23B, the hum of the air conditioner blended with the soft rhythm of footsteps. Mama Ijeoma was already awake. She tied her wrapper firmly around her waist and carried her small plastic bucket from the guest room to the living area. Her joints ached, but she smiled through the pain. She had risen before dawn all her life. It was the hour she felt closest to God. As she filled the bucket at the kitchen sink, the cold water bit at her fingers. She didn't mind. "A house must feel the hand of its keeper," she whispered, dipping the rag into the water. The marble floor gleamed faintly under the dim light. Mama knelt and began to wipe gentle, circular strokes that looked like small prayers in motion. She hummed a hymn softly, the same one she used to sing in Jabi Waterfront when she woke before sunrise to stir her porridge pot. But this house was different. The air here didn't hum back with life. It echoed instead like a hall that refused to hold warmth. As Mama worked, the bedroom door opened. Chioma Eze, elegant even in her morning robe, stepped into the living room holding a cup of coffee. She froze for a moment, staring at the kneeling woman. "Mama," she said, her tones sharp with disbelief. "Are you cleaning again?" Mama looked up, smiling gently. "Ah, good morning, my daughter. I just wanted to tidy the place a bit before my son leaves for work." Chioma's brows knitted together. "We have a maid for that. You don't need to keep touching everything." Mama kept her smile, though it faltered slightly. "Forgive me. It's just a habit, my dear. I can't sit and do nothing." Back in Jabi, when Tunde went to school, I always cleaned his table before he came home. It made me feel close to him. Chioma sipped her coffee, staring down at her. "Well, this isn't Jabi, Mama. This is Maitama. People don't need to scrub floors to prove love here." Mama's voice softened. "Love is proven through hands, not words." The younger woman sighed dramatically, setting her cup down. "You don't understand city life, Mama. We work to afford comfort. If you keep doing this, what does it say about us? That we can't afford help? That my husband's family doesn't belong here?" Mama's face fell, confusion wrinkling her brow. "No, no, my daughter. I only wanted the house to feel enough," Chioma snapped, her tone rising like heat. "You're making me look bad." For a long moment, the two women stared at each other, the old one's eyes full of patient pain, the younger's full of fear, disguised as pride. From the hallway, a faint beep came from the smart speaker, an automated voice announcing, "Recording saved to cloud." Neither woman noticed. Later that morning, Tunde stepped out of the bedroom, adjusting his tie. The tension in the room was thick enough to touch. He noticed his mother sitting quietly on the sofa, hands folded in her lap, her rag and bucket beside her. Chioma stood near the counter, scrolling through her phone, pretending not to see her. What's going on? He asked, glancing between them. Nothing, Chioma said quickly, her tone too light. Just a little misunderstanding. Mama smiled faintly. It's fine, my son. I talked too much this morning. Tunde frowned. Chioma. She shrugged. I told her not to clean, that's all. It's not good for her health, and honestly, it's embarrassing. The maid is coming tomorrow. Mama reached out to touch her son's hand. It's all right. She's right. I should rest. Tunde hesitated, looking at her frail fingers. They reminded him of the hands that once packed his lunch, that tied his shoelaces before school, that sold porridge by the water so he could eat. He wanted to say something kind, something that would make it better, but the words died on his lips. He forced a smile. Mama, Chioma means well. She's just used to a different way of living. Mama nodded, though her eyes shimmered. I understand, my son. But different shouldn't mean distant. He said nothing. He picked up his briefcase, kissed his wife's cheek, and left for work. When the door closed, silence returned like a familiar guest. Chioma exhaled, rubbing her temples. Mama, please. I didn't mean to be harsh. Mama looked up with a sad smile. You remind me of myself when I was young, too proud to let anyone see your kindness. The words stung, though they were spoken gently. Chioma turned away. At the office downtown, the morning rush was relentless. Tunde's phone buzzed an email notification from Ada Ora HR. Subject CSR proposal reminder, elderly care outreach. We're still looking for a director to represent our Abuja branch. Please confirm your availability this week. He hovered over the reply button, his finger trembling slightly. For a moment he thought of his mother's silver hair, the way she smiled, even after being scolded. Then he shut his laptop. Not now, he muttered. Later. But later never came soon enough. At Maitama Crest, Mama decided to make lunch. The maid hadn't arrived yet, and she couldn't stand watching time sit idle. She found beans in the pantry, a little palm oil and onions. As the aroma filled the kitchen, she hummed her favorite hymn again. When Chioma returned from a quick outing, the smell greeted her before the door even opened. Her stomach clenched. Oh no! She stormed into the kitchen. Mama, are you cooking again? Mama looked up, startled, wooden spoon in hand. Yes, I thought Tunde might like some beans when he returns. He used to enough. Mama. Chioma's voice cracked like glass. You don't understand. That smell, it clings to everything. My curtains, my clothes. You're turning my home into a market stall. Mama froze. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then she turned off the stove. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll pack it away. Chioma pressed her hand to her forehead, pacing. Why can't you just rest? My God, you act like a servant. Mama didn't answer. She carried the pot carefully to her room, her steps slow and heavy. Inside, she placed the pot on the floor beside her bed, sat down and looked out the window. From up there, the sky was too bright, too far. I don't belong here, she murmured. This house doesn't breathe. That evening, Tunde returned home. Chioma greeted him with wine. Mama greeted him with silence. He noticed the tension immediately. Mama, did you eat? She smiled. Yes, my son. Good. I'll shower first. When he disappeared into the bedroom, Chioma turned to her mother-in-law. Please, Mama, don't tell him we argued. Mama's voice was gentle. I won't. I never want to shame my children. Chioma hesitated, guilt flashing across her face, but pride quickly buried it. Thank you. As night fell, the apartment glowed softly with lamplight. Tunde stood on the balcony gazing at the Abuja skyline, unaware that a storm of a different kind was brewing inside his home. In her room, Mama opened her tin box again. She took out the folded note she'd once written for Tunde and read it under the lamplight. When the heart forgets humility, even gold turns cold. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Lord, please keep my boy warm. Outside, a clap of thunder echoed faintly over the city. From the ceiling corner, the red camera light blinked once, watching silent, remembering. And down below at Jabi waterfront, the waves lapped softly against the shore, as if trying to remind someone somewhere high above that home was still waiting. The afternoon heat of Abuja pressed heavy against the glass walls of Maitama Crest residences, the kind of heat that made the city shimmer like a mirage. Inside apartment 23B, the air conditioner hummed, but even its cool breath couldn't calm the tension that lingered in the rooms. The scent of lavender polish still floated faintly from the morning's cleaning, but it mingled now with something sharper unease, the invisible smell of pride rubbing against love. Mama Ijeoma moved quietly through the hallway, clutching her rag and small bucket. Her knees ached, yet her heart urged her on. The living room was silent. Chioma had gone into the bedroom after lunch, complaining about a headache. Mama looked at the low table near the window where sunlight spilled across the marble. A small water stain glimmered there, a single imperfection in a room obsessed with perfection. She hesitated. Just one spot, she whispered to herself. Only one. Dipping her rag into the water, she began to wipe. Slow, careful, loving. She didn't notice the bedroom door creak open. Chioma stood in the doorway, her face pale from the afternoon light, her voice slicing the air. What did I say about touching anything in this house? Mama froze mid-motion. The rag trembled in her hand. Ah, Chioma, my daughter, I only saw a little stain. I thought to clean it before Tunde. Before Tunde, what? Chioma interrupted, stepping closer. Her voice rose sharp and brittle. Before he thinks we live like slum people, before he smells the poverty you keep dragging into my house. The old woman blinked, confused, her lips trembling. Poverty, my child. Chioma's laughter was dry, cruel. Yes, poverty. It's in your clothes, your hands, even your smell. You can wash these floors 100 times, Mama, but it will never wash you. The words hit like stones. Mama straightened slowly, pain and sorrow pooling behind her eyes. You have a good heart, my daughter. I can feel it. Don't let pride make it hard. Enough, Chioma shouted. Stop pretending holiness. You're not a saint, you're a burden. The argument rose like a storm. Each word slammed against the marble walls, bouncing, echoing. From the corner of the ceiling, the security camera blinked, its tiny red light pulsing like a heartbeat. Mama stepped back, clutching her rag, voice trembling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean harm. I only wanted my son to feel peace when he returns home. Peace, Chioma sneered. How can there be peace when you're crawling all over my floor like a beggar? She moved closer, her perfume thick in the air. You've made this place smell like charcoal and smoke. Even the walls stink of it, Mama's breath caught. That smell, she whispered, is what fed your husband. It's the scent of the fire that kept him alive. For a split second, Chioma hesitated. The words hit something deep, but pride answered first. Don't lecture me, old woman. The slap came fast, hot, sharp, unthinking. A loud crack split the air. The rag fell from Mama's hand. Water splashed across the floor, spreading like tears. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Chioma's foot caught the bucket's edge. In sudden anger, she kicked it. It slammed against the wall, the clang echoing through the pristine apartment. Get out, she screamed. Get out of my house, you filthy Mama. Chioma staggered back, her frail frame trembling. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. Chioma, my daughter, please. The next moment, she stumbled. Her hand slipped on the wet floor and she fell hard, her head striking the marble with a dull thud. The sound silenced everything. The air conditioner, the city hum, even Chioma's breath. The old woman lay still. The bucket rolled once more, spilling the last of its water across the tiles. Chioma stood frozen, her hand to her mouth. No, 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 no. She dropped to her knees beside the motionless figure. Mama, Mama, wake up! No response. Only the faint drip of water falling from the rag, the sound slow and rhythmic, like time refusing to stop. God, Chioma whispered, her voice shaking. I didn't mean to. I just wanted you to stop. She reached for her phone, fumbling, trembling fingers, dialing Tunde's number. At that moment, downtown Tunde Okafor sat in a meeting, half listening to the financial director. His phone vibrated. Seeing Chioma's name, he hesitated, annoyed it wasn't like her to call during work. He answered. Her voice came through, fragmented, breathless. Tunde, please come home. Mama, she fell. What? His chair scraped against the floor. What do you mean she fell? It was an accident, Chioma's voice cracked. She was cleaning again. I told her to stop. Then she slipped. Tunde didn't wait for more. He grabbed his keys, ran past startled colleagues, and burst into the parking lot. By the time he reached Maitama, crest sirens were already flashing at the gate. Neighbors gathered in the hallway, murmuring. The elevator doors opened with a chime, and he rushed out, his chest tight. In the living room, he found Chioma on the couch, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. Beside her on the cold floor lay Mama Chioma, still silent, the cleaning rag still clutched in her hand. Tunde dropped to his knees. Mama, Mama, wake up. He shook her shoulders, gently, desperate. Please, Mama, Chioma sobbed. She was cleaning. She fell. I didn't mean. Call the ambulance, he shouted. They're on their way, she whispered, shaking. Tunde pressed his ear to his mother's chest. Faint breathing, shallow, fragile. Relief hit him like lightning. She's alive, he gasped. Hold on, Mama. Please. Minutes stretched into eternity before paramedics arrived. They lifted Mama carefully onto a stretcher, the oxygen mask hissing softly as they secured it. Tunde followed them to the elevator, his hands trembling, his thoughts scattering like broken glass. Chioma tried to follow, but the officer at the door stopped her gently. Madam, please wait. The police may need your statement. Her lips parted. Police. He nodded toward the ceiling. The building management said there's a camera in this unit. It records everything. They've already pulled the feed. Chioma's blood turned to ice. She looked up, following his gaze. There in the corner, the red light blinked steadily, unblinking, merciless. At the hospital, Tunde sat outside the emergency ward, his head in his hands. His suit was soaked from rain and sweat. Nurses passed by their shoes, whispering against the tiles. The sterile scent of disinfectant filled the air. A doctor stepped out, face grave. Mr. Okafor. Tunde leapt up. Yes, she's stable for now, but her condition is critical. We'll do what we can. She suffered a severe head injury. Tunde's world blurred. Can I see her briefly? Inside the ward, Mama lay small and pale against white sheets. Machines beeped softly, measuring the rhythm of a life too tired to keep fighting. Tunde held her hand. Mama, I'm here, he whispered. Please don't leave me. Not like this. Her eyelids fluttered faintly. He thought he heard her murmur something, maybe a prayer, maybe his name. Then silence. Outside the hospital window, the Abuja sky darkened. Lightning cracked above the hills, thunder rolling like a warning. Back at Maitama Crest, Chioma sat alone on the couch, staring at the rag on the floor, the water stain drying into a ghostly mark. Her reflection in the marble looked like a stranger. She whispered to no one. It was just a slap. But the walls said nothing. The house, spotless as ever, had turned colder still. From the security room downstairs, Mr. Namdi the guard watched the playback footage on a small monitor, his face pale. The timestamp blinked, 3:12 p.m. He swallowed hard and whispered, Lord have mercy. Above him the rain began to fall over, Abuja soft at first, then heavy, washing down the glass towers that reflected everything except compassion. The rain hadn't stopped since nightfall in Abuja. It drummed steadily on the glass facade of Maitama Crest residences, streaking the windows with silver lines. The city lights below blurred into watery colors, red, white, and gold. Inside the apartment, silence reigned. The kind that comes only after something breaks too deeply to be repaired. Chioma Eze sat motionless on the couch, her fingers clutching the edge of a throw pillow, her eyes swollen from crying. The faint reflection of the ceiling light danced on the puddle that had dried hours ago, the same water that had spilled from Mama Ijeoma's bucket. It was gone now, but the ghost of that moment clung to every corner of the house. The front door creaked open. Tunde Okafor stepped in, soaked to the bone, his tie-loosened eyes hollow. Behind him, two uniformed officers entered quietly, their shoes leaving wet prints on the marble floor. One of them held a small hard drive sealed in a clear bag, the evidence retrieved from the apartment's security system. Chioma rose trembling. Tunde, please, she whispered. It wasn't what it looked like. I swear I didn't mean to hurt her. He didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the bucket by the wall, now empty, its handle bent. Where were you when she fell? She was cleaning again and I told her to stop. She wouldn't listen. She slipped. Her voice cracked under the weight of the lie. The officer spoke gently but firmly. Madam, we'll need a formal statement. The footage from the camera has been submitted to the FCT Police Command. Chioma's knees nearly gave out. Footage, yes ma'am. The apartment system is equipped with 24-hour recording. It captured the incident at approximately 3:12 p.m. She turned to Tunde, panic rising. Tunde, please listen to me. I lost my temper. Yes, but I didn't. She fell. I didn't mean to. He closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. Don't say another word, Chioma. Just don't. One of the officers gestured toward the door. Mr. Okafor, we'll need you both to come with us. Standard protocol. At the Abuja Police Headquarters, the corridors smelled faintly of damp paper and disinfectant. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the air. Tunde sat at a metal table in the viewing room, his hands clasped tightly together, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. On the wall-mounted monitor, the video was cued to play. The officer pressed a button. The screen flickered, then came to life. The familiar image of his living room appeared, the marble gleaming, the faint sound of distant city traffic, muffled by the glass. Then from the left edge of the frame, Mama Ijeoma entered, her movements slow and careful. She bent down, her rag gliding over the floor. For a few seconds there was peace. Then the door opened and Chioma appeared. Tunde gripped the edge of the table as he watched his wife's mouth move. Though the audio was faint, he could hear the rising anger in her tone, the venom of her words. That smell of smoke, that smell of poverty. Then came the moment, the slap, sharp and merciless. Mama staggered, the bucket overturned, the second blow, the kick. The old woman fell her head, striking the marble. The camera caught it all, the shock, the silence, the tremble of Chioma's hand afterward. Then she knelt, touched the body, froze, and whispered something the microphone barely picked up. God, what have I done? When the screen went black, no one in the room spoke. The hum of the light seemed suddenly too loud. Tunde's shoulders shook. That's my mother, he whispered, voice cracking. That's the woman who sold porridge by the lake so I could wear shoes to school. And his words broke. I left her with this. Chioma sat in the next room, her wrists trembling on the table. Her lipstick had smeared her hair disheveled. She could hear Tunde's muffled sobs through the wall. A female officer slid a paper toward her. Madam, please read and sign your statement. I didn't want to kill her, Chioma murmured. It was just anger. Just a moment. The officer sighed quietly. Anger is still a choice. When they finally released Tunde, hours later, dawn was breaking over Abuja. The sky had softened to gray, the rain slowing to a drizzle. He drove in silence, the wipers sweeping back and forth with metronomic sorrow. He parked outside the hospital where Mama Ijeoma lay. The building loomed pale against the morning light. Inside, nurses moved briskly, their shoes whispering on the linoleum. In room 203, the machine still hummed softly. Mama's face was calm, her breathing shallow. Tunde sat beside her, holding her frail hand in both of his. Mama, he whispered, his voice low, broken. They showed me, Mama. I saw everything. I should have protected you. I should have stopped her. Her fingers twitched faintly against his palm. He leaned closer, desperate to hear her voice. My son. It was barely a whisper. Her eyelids fluttered, her lips pale. Don't hate her. Hate. Pride. It's the real thief. Tunde pressed his forehead to her hand, tears slipping down his face. I don't deserve forgiveness. But the heart monitor beeped steady and calm, as if forgiveness had already arrived before he asked. By evening, the story had reached the internet. Someone from the building staff had leaked that the footage existed. The headlines spread fast: elderly mother attacked in Abuja luxury apartment. Director's wife under investigation for assault. Comments exploded across social media: outrage, disbelief, pity, condemnation. Strangers argued over the morality of wealth and the decay of respect. In his office, Tunde's phone rang endlessly. Colleagues, reporters, the company's legal team. He turned it off, unable to face any of them. At home, Mr. Namdi, the security guard, knelt quietly in the chapel corner of his quarters. Lord, he prayed, forgive us all for the times we saw kindness and called it weakness. The next morning, the police summoned Tunde again. Chief Inspector Dan Lottie met him in a small, windowless office. We finished reviewing the footage, the inspector said. It confirms your wife was the aggressor. But Mr. Okafor, there's something else. He slid a file across the table, a transcript from the smart home speaker. The AI assistant picked up the argument before the assault. It recorded her words automatically. Tunde frowned, his heart heavy. Her words. The inspector nodded grimly. You should hear them yourself. He pressed play. The robotic voice echoed through the room, repeating the lines in a detached tone. You'll never wash it off. That smell. That smoke. That poverty. Then silence. Tunde shut his eyes. It wasn't just the slap, it was the contempt, the poison of forgetting where one came from. The inspector spoke gently. We'll proceed with charges, but if your mother's condition worsens, he paused. It could become a homicide case. The words hit like thunder. That night, Tunde sat again by his mother's bedside. The lights were dim, the machine steady. Outside the window, Abuja glowed distant and cold, the towers of glass reflecting nothing but themselves. He took his mother's hand. Mama, I built a life on forgetting. I called it success, but now I see it was pride wearing a suit. A single tear slid from her closed eyes. Her lips moved faintly. Clean. Your heart. The monitors beeped softly. Tunde bowed his head, tears falling freely. I will, Mama. I promise. In that moment, the rain outside stopped. The air stilled heavy with truth. Back at Maitama Crest, the apartment remained spotless marble, shining furniture in place. But in the ceiling corner, the camera's red light blinked one last time before going dark, as if even the machine had seen enough of human sorrow. By dawn, one story was ending and another was waiting to be written. The rain began long before dawn, a steady whisper against the tin roof of St. Matthew's Chapel in Woos. It was the kind of rain Abuja knew well, patient, persistent, cleansing everything except the ache in people's hearts. Inside, the small church candles flickered beside a simple wooden coffin. The scent of wax and lilies filled the air, mingling with grief so thick it felt like mist. Mama Ijeoma lay inside the coffin, her face calm and pale, her hands folded over her chest. The years of hardship had left their traces, faint scars, wrinkles like river lines, but peace softened them now. Her head was wrapped neatly in her favorite blue scarf, and in her hands rested a small aluminum spoon, the one she used for stirring porridge by the Jabi waterfront. Mourners trickled in silently, some from her old neighborhood, women in faded wrappers, men who once bought her breakfast before heading to the docks. They bowed their heads respectfully, whispering prayers for the mother who never stopped working. At the front row sat Tunde Okafor, motionless. His black suit clung to him, soaked from the rain outside. His eyes were swollen, his hands trembling on his knees. Next to him, Kioma sat stiffly, her face pale, her lips bloodless. She wore a black veil, but it could not hide the ruin in her eyes. For 2 days, Mama had fought for her life in the hospital. On the third morning, as the rain began, her heart gave a final sigh. The doctor had said the blow to her head was too much. Tunde hadn't spoken since that moment. The only sound in the chapel was the rain drumming softly against the roof, like 1,000 hands clapping in sorrow. At the pulpit, Pastor Chukwu cleared his throat, his deep voice trembling. Today, he said, we bury not only a mother but a heart that refused to stop loving. In this city of glass and gold, she lived humbly. And though her body rests now, her kindness still walks among us. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A few women wiped their eyes with the corners of their headscarves. Tunde's friend Kola stepped forward from the back of the room. He was tall, soft-spoken, his eyes filled with quiet sympathy. He placed a hand on Tunde's shoulder. Brother, he whispered, the world must know the truth. You can't bury this pain in silence. Let your mother's story speak. Tunde didn't look up. What good will truth do now? She's gone. Kola crouched beside him. Maybe truth won't bring her back, but it can give her peace. There's a video, isn't there? Let it play. Let them see what she endured. At the mention of the video, Chioma's hands tightened into fists. Her breath hitched under the veil. The pastor nodded gently from the altar. If it is God's will for the truth to come to light, then so be it. A projector had been set up on the wall behind the pulpit, a borrowed screen from the church's youth ministry. The faint blue glow flickered to life. The rain softened as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. The officer from the FCT police stepped forward with a small flash drive. This, he said quietly, is the recording from the camera inside your home. We release it now with your consent. Tunde's voice was hoarse. Play it. The screen came alive. The image was grainy, the perspective high from the ceiling corner, the marble floor gleaming the sofa, casting a shadow. Then there she was, Mama Ijeoma, kneeling with her rag, wiping the floor, smiling faintly as she worked. A few seconds later, Chioma entered the frame. Even through the flicker of the video, her anger looked sharp, her body language tense. The audience held their breath. No one spoke. Then came the slap. The sound of it, amplified through the chapel speakers, echoed across the room. Someone gasped aloud. The old woman stumbled. The bucket spilled. The kick followed. The silence afterward was deafening. On the screen, Mama lay motionless, the rag slipping from her hand. Chioma's mouth moved. No one needed to hear the words to feel their venom. The video ended. The screen went black. For a moment, all that existed was the sound of rain, the flicker of candles, and the weight of shame pressing down like a mountain. Then Tunde stood up. His voice was rough, shaking. You all saw it. He turned toward the coffin. That was my mother, the woman who sold corn porridge, so I could study, who sewed my shirts when we couldn't afford new ones. She never asked for much, only that I never forget where I came from. His voice cracked. And I did. I forgot. I built a house so clean, it had no heart. I let pride grow like mold in the corners. And because I stayed silent, he pointed toward the screen, this happened. The crowd wept quietly. Chioma covered her face, her shoulders shaking. I didn't mean to, she whispered, barely audible. I just wanted her to stop. I was angry. Tunde didn't look at her. He turned toward the altar instead. If there is a hell, it begins when a son fails to protect the woman who gave him life. He knelt beside the coffin, placing his hands on the polished wood. Mother, I let ambition silence compassion. I thought success meant never looking back. But what is success worth if it kills love? The rain grew heavier, pounding the roof like judgment. In the back of the chapel, Auntie Bisi, her wrapper damp from travel, stepped forward, slowly holding something wrapped in cloth. Tunde, she said softly, her voice trembling. Your mother left this with me long ago. She told me to give it to you when the world felt too proud to kneel. She unwrapped the cloth, revealing the tin box, its surface worn, its latch slightly rusted. Tunde's eyes widened. He took it with shaking hands. Her box. She said it carried her last message, BC whispered. Tunde opened it slowly. Inside, folded neatly, was a single piece of paper, yellowed with time. The handwriting was shaky, but careful. My son, if your house ever grows too clean for love, open a window and let kindness back in. Leave a chair in your home for the poor, not so they can rest, but so you remember you once sat there too. Tunde's tears fell freely, now blotting the ink. Mama. Chioma rose unsteadily, her veil slipping. She walked forward, stopped a few feet from the coffin, and fell to her knees. Mother, she sobbed, I don't deserve forgiveness, but if your spirit still watches, please teach me how to love again. The pastor stepped down from the altar and laid a hand on her shoulder. Child, he said softly, forgiveness is not earned, it is lived. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, but the rain began to ease. Light filtered through the chapel windows, turning the air golden and damp. The pastor raised his hands. Let us pray. As the congregation bowed their heads, the sound of weeping mixed with rain, soft and human. And in that moment, Tunde understood something his mother had been teaching all his life, that grief is only love, that has nowhere left to go, and forgiveness is the road that leads it home. When the service ended, the coffin was carried out beneath the gray sky. The rain fell softly again, but this time it felt different, gentler, like a mother's hand on her son's shoulder. At the gate, Tunde looked back at the chapel one last time. The candles inside flickered in the breeze, and for a fleeting second, he thought he saw her, Mama Ijeoma, standing by the door smiling. He blinked and she was gone. Only the rain remained, washing the streets of Wuse clean. The sun rose over Jabi waterfront, golden and soft, breaking through the mist that hovered above the water. The same breeze that once carried the scent of porridge now carried a quiet promise of change. It had been 3 weeks since the funeral in Wuse, but for Tunde Okafor, time hadn't moved. Every dawn felt like the same gray morning, his mother's absence echoing louder than the city's noise. He stood at the edge of the settlement where his childhood home once leaned against the wind. The house was gone now, replaced by patches of grass and puddles from the rain. In his hands, he held the tin box, the one Mama Ijeoma had left behind. He rubbed his thumb across the rusted latch, feeling the weight of her words again. Leave a chair in your home for the poor. Behind him, Auntie BC approached her steps, slow but steady. You've been coming here every morning, she said softly. The water doesn't answer grief, my son. Tunde nodded without turning. It helps me remember the sound of her voice. Every wave sounds like she's still speaking. BC smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time to let her speak through what you do, not just what you hear. He looked at her puzzled. You have her kindness, BC continued. Don't bury it under guilt. Build something with it. Her words sank deep. That night, under the soft hum of Jabi's streetlights, Tunde unfolded a piece of paper and began to sketch. The drawing was rough, just a rectangle with a roof and a small sign. Above it, he wrote Mama Ijeoma home. 2 months later, where wild grass once grew, the first walls of the shelter rose. The people of Jabi watched in curiosity as volunteers hammered nails and mixed cement. The funds came quietly from Tunde's savings, from colleagues who believed in redemption more than reputation, and from small donations sent anonymously after Mama's story had spread across the internet. Every brick laid carried a name of a mother from the community, Ngozi Halima BC Comfort. By the time the roof went up, there were 50 names, and Tunde carved one more in the center beam, Ijeoma Grace Okafor. The day the shelter opened, the air was full of the smell of cornmeal and palm oil. On the wall above the door, a wooden plaque read, No one who cleans with love is ever dirty. Tunde stood at the entrance wearing a simple white shirt and slippers, greeting everyone who came, elderly women from Jabi, widows from Kuchigoro settlement, children who had lost their parents to floods or hunger. He served them steaming bowls of porridge himself, his hands trembling slightly each time he passed one forward. A local journalist approached him with a camera crew. Sir, are you the same Tunde Okafor from Maitama? The director Tunde hesitated. I was he, said finally. Now I'm just a son trying to clean what pride left behind. The journalist lowered her microphone, visibly moved. And what will this place be? A home, he said simply, for those the city has forgotten. For every mother who ever worked until her hands cracked, they deserve warmth, not pity. Behind him, Pastor Chukwu smiled proudly. The Lord rebuilds us through what we rebuild, he murmured. That afternoon, while the crowd thinned and the volunteers rested, a car stopped by the entrance. The door opened slowly, and Chioma stepped out. She was thinner now, her eyes sunken, her face bare of makeup. The sleek elegance of Maitama was gone. In its place stood a woman stripped of pride, fragile but human again. She clutched a small paper bag as she walked toward the shelter, her heels clicking softly on the dirt. Tunde saw her and froze. Their eyes met hers, filled with guilt, his with quiet exhaustion. Tunde, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know if I should come. I can't sleep. I see her face every time I close my eyes. He didn't reply. She swallowed hard. I've been to the police, to the court hearings. They said the case could close if you speak on my behalf. But that's not why I came. She took a breath, holding out the bag. I brought this. It's Mama's scarf. The blue one. They gave it to me after the autopsy. I couldn't keep it. Tunde took it silently. The fabric was soft, still carrying a faint smell of soap. He pressed it to his chest, his eyes closing. When he looked at her again, his voice was steady. You don't need to ask for forgiveness. You need to live it. Chioma's tears fell freely. How serve, he said. Every day, without praise, without vanity. If you truly want peace, come here. Wash bowls, sweep floors, feed the old. Not as punishment, but as cleansing. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. If you'll allow it, I'll stay. In the days that followed, Chioma Eze became the quiet worker no one recognized. She wore a simple wrapper, tied her hair in a scarf, and spent her mornings scrubbing pots in the open-air kitchen. The other women didn't know who she was, only that she worked hard and never complained. At first, people whispered, that one doesn't talk much. She's too pale for this kind of work. But gradually they began to smile at her, to share jokes, to pass her bowls of porridge. One day an old woman clasped her hand and said, You clean like a person washing her own heart. Chioma cried that night. Tunde watched her from afar. He didn't speak much to her, but he noticed the change, the way her back straightened with purpose, the way her eyes no longer avoided mirrors. One morning, Pastor Chukwu gathered everyone in the courtyard. The sun was soft, the smell of breakfast in the air. Today, he said, we dedicate this home to the spirit of mothers. But remember, true dedication is not words on a wall. It is the work of our hands. He looked at Tunde. My son, your hands are clean now, but they must never stop cleaning. Keep serving, and you will keep her alive. Tunde nodded, tears glinting in his eyes. Chioma stepped forward, carrying a steaming pot of porridge. She placed it on the table before him. May I serve the first bowl? She asked quietly. He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. Go ahead. She ladled the porridge carefully into a bowl and handed it to an elderly woman sitting nearby. The woman smiled, whispering, Bless you, my daughter. Chioma bowed her head. No, she said softly. Bless her. That evening, as dusk fell over Jabi, the shelter glowed with the warm light of lanterns. Children laughed, elders sang softly, and the smell of corn and milk filled the night. Tunde sat on the steps, watching the flicker of light reflect on the water. He held the blue scarf in his hands, turning it gently in the breeze. Auntie Bisi joined him, lowering herself carefully onto the step beside him. You've made your mother proud, she said. Do you feel lighter now? He smiled faintly. I don't know if I'll ever feel light again, but at least I feel alive. Bisi nodded. That's what forgiveness does. It doesn't erase, it redeems. Across the yard, Chioma was helping an old man find a seat. She laughed quietly at something he said, her voice soft but clear. Tunde watched her for a moment, then whispered, Mama said to always leave a chair for the poor. I think she meant for all of us who forget what humility feels like. The wind picked up, rustling the trees. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled faintly. But the air here at Mama Ijeoma home felt calm, like a heart finally learning how to breathe again. And for the first time in months, when Tunde closed his eyes, he didn't see a marble floor or a blinking red light. He saw his mother's smile reflected in every bowl of porridge, every act of kindness shared beneath that humble roof. Morning sunlight stretched across the Jabi waterfront, washing the roofs of Mama Ijeoma home in gold. The shelter had grown busier, with each passing week. Laughter now filled the air where silence once lived. Old women stirred porridge in wide aluminum pots, their wrinkled hands steady with rhythm. Children, barefoot and bright-eyed, chased one another between the clotheslines, their laughter blending with the calls of street hawkers outside. For Tunde Okafor, the home had become a temple, not of religion, but of redemption. He rose before dawn each day, sweeping the courtyard, fetching water, cooking breakfast. The work was endless, but his heart had found peace in every simple motion. Yet even as he served, something inside him kept whispering, there's more to give. That morning, as he handed out bowls of porridge, he noticed a small boy sitting alone near the gate. The boy's clothes were torn, his knees dusty. He wasn't eating, he was tracing letters in the dirt with a stick. A, B, See. Tunde knelt beside him. What's your name, my son? The boy looked up shyly. Uche, sir. Why aren't you eating? I wanted to finish my writing first, the boy said proudly. I'm learning to spell my name. Tunde smiled softly. And who's teaching you? Uche pointed to one of the older women washing dishes nearby. Mama Ngozi. She said letters are like keys. If I learn enough, they'll open every door. The word struck something deep inside him. He thought of his own childhood, the way his mother used to trace words on old cardboard with charcoal, teaching him to read under a flickering lantern. He remembered how those letters had carried him out of Jabi into glass towers and marble halls. And he remembered how pride had made him forget the woman who first taught him to spell hope. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Tunde sat by the riverbank with a notebook. The moonlight fell across the pages as he began to write. His handwriting was uneven, hurried alive. Tomorrow I will start a school. Not for grades or uniforms, but for dignity. Let the poor learn so they'll never have to bow their heads again. He closed the notebook and whispered into the night, Mama, I think I finally understand what you meant by cleaning hearts. Weeks turned into months. Word spread quickly through the settlements. Mama Ijioma's son is teaching. At first there were only 5 children. Uche, 2 girls who sold oranges by the roadside, and a pair of brothers who worked carrying buckets of water. They gathered in the shelter courtyard, sitting on old wooden benches. Tunde found an abandoned blackboard, cleaned it, and nailed it to the wall. He used chalk borrowed from a church nearby. His lessons were simple letters, numbers, and moral stories, his mother once told him. If your hands are dirty, wash them. But if your heart is dirty, help someone until it's clean, he told them. The children listened wide-eyed. For many of them, this was the first time anyone had called them students. As the days passed, more children came. Some sat on the floor, others stood by the doorway repeating words under their breath. Chioma began to help too. She organized old notebooks, made simple uniforms from donated fabric, and cooked meals during breaks. When a volunteer from the local church visited, she asked softly, Can I help teach reading? Chioma hesitated, but Tunde nodded. Yes. Teach them what you once forgot how to speak with kindness. She smiled through tears. Then I'll start with that. By the 3rd month, Mama Ijeoma home had transformed. Half of the courtyard was now a makeshift classroom with benches, chalkboards, and colorful posters drawn by the children. A hand-painted sign hung at the entrance, Grace Learning Corner Knowledge is the soap that cleans the soul. One afternoon, a journalist returned, the same one who had first covered the shelter's opening. Mr. Okafor, she said, smiling, your story has touched hearts all over Nigeria. Donors from the UK and Ghana have reached out. They want to fund your school. Tunde blinked in surprise. I didn't build this to be famous, she nodded. And that's exactly why it's working. You turned your pain into purpose. People feel that. Construction began again, this time for a real building. A small brick structure with 2 classrooms, a roof of corrugated metal, and a water tank out front. Children from across Jabi and Kuchigoro came running when the first bell rang. Tunde stood at the front on opening day, chalk in hand. His heart pounded as he wrote on the board in large, uneven letters, Welcome to Mama Ijeoma Academy. He turned to the children. Do you know why we're here? A tiny girl raised her hand. To learn how to read, sir, he smiled. Yes. But more than that, to learn how to live. Education is not just books. It's learning how to keep your heart clean even when your hands get dirty. The children clapped, their laughter echoing off the fresh brick walls. That evening, the academy's first song filled the air. Chioma stood beside the blackboard, leading the children in a simple tune she had written. Wash your hands, wash your heart. Let love be where lessons start. If the world forgets your name, kindness still will light your flame. The sound floated across the settlement like prayer. Women at the market paused to listen. Men returning from work slowed their steps. Even the waves of Jabi Lagoon seemed to hum along. Tunde watched from the doorway, emotion tightening his throat. He turned toward the small altar in the corner of the classroom where his mother's photograph hung beside a candle. We did it, Mama, he whispered. Your lessons didn't end with you. Later that night, as the moon rose over the water, Tunde sat alone in the classroom. The desks were empty, the air smelled faintly of chalk and corn porridge. On the board, the day's final lesson remained. Kindness is stronger than shame. Chioma entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of hot tea. You didn't eat, she said softly. He smiled. Neither did you. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the distant sound of the waves. Then she asked, Do you ever think she's watching? He looked toward the photograph. I don't think. I know. Chioma's eyes filled. Sometimes I dream of her. She's always smiling, but she doesn't speak. I wake up wanting to ask her if she forgives me. She already did, Tunde said gently. The moment you started serving others, you gave her peace. They sipped their tea quietly, the moonlight spilling across their faces. Outside, the laughter of children drifted faintly from the dormitories, blending with the night breeze. Tunde closed his eyes and whispered, "Every bowl we serve, every word we teach, it's her voice speaking through us." Chioma nodded, her smile trembling. "Then let's never stop listening." The lantern flickered, and for a fleeting second its flame formed a shape like a mother's face, calm, kind, eternal. And as the night deepened over Abuja, Mama Ijeoma Academy stood glowing softly by the waterfront, a beacon of love born from lost proof that some hearts once broken can light the whole world. The Harmattan winds had begun to sweep through Abuja, painting the air in a haze of gold and dust. The mornings at Mama Ijeoma Academy came alive with children's laughter, echoing across Jabi waterfront, where the smell of porridge and chalk had become the fragrance of new beginnings. The once silent land where grief had been buried now pulsed with life, a rhythm of forgiveness and rebirth. Every day at sunrise, Tunde Okafor stood at the gate of the academy, greeting students as they arrived. Some carried donated books, others held nothing but joy. Their bare feet splashed through puddles left by the early dew, and Tunde could almost hear his mother's voice carried in the wind. A clean floor means nothing without a clean heart. He smiled each morning when he saw Chioma among the teachers. Her laughter was quieter, now softer, and when she spoke to the children, her tone carried a patience she once never knew. She had become a pillar of the academy, teaching, reading, and songs of gratitude. The children called her Auntie Chioma, never guessing she was once the woman the world had condemned. That morning, she entered the small office where Tunde sat writing letters to sponsors. "We've received word from the Ministry of Education," she said, holding a paper carefully. "They're sending a delegation next month. They want to recognize Mama Ijeoma Academy as an official community school." Tunde looked up stunned. "Official, yes." She smiled, her eyes shining. "You did it, Tunde. You built something real." He shook his head. "No, we did it." And he pointed toward the photograph of Mama on the wall she never left. They stood in silence, the morning light falling gently across the framed photo of Mama Ijeoma, her smile eternal. That evening, a light rain fell. The children were inside finishing their lessons while thunder rolled softly in the distance. Tunde walked to the water's edge holding the old tin lunchbox, the one that had carried his mother's final letter. He had polished it until the rust turned silver again. He knelt, the sand damp beneath his knees. "Mama," he whispered, "you told me once not to come home out of pity but out of purpose. I finally understand. I didn't rebuild this place for forgiveness. I rebuilt it so love would have a roof." The water lapped at his shoes. Across the lagoon, lightning lit the sky, revealing the faint shapes of fishermen hauling their nets. Tunde smiled, remembering the nights he'd sat here as a boy dreaming of escaping poverty. Now he realized the escape was never from Makoko or Jabi, it was from forgetting compassion. He opened the tin box and took out a single folded paper, his mother's note. The edges were worn from being read so many times, but the ink still held strong. He laid it gently on a small wooden altar he'd built beside the shore. Around it, candles flickered in the wind. A group of the academy children had followed him, quietly curious. Uche, the boy who had once written his name in the dirt, stepped forward. "Teacher," he asked softly, "why are you lighting candles?" Tunde smiled at him. "Because light remembers what darkness forgets. These candles are for every mother who works so her child could rise." Uche looked up. "Like Mama Ijeoma," yes, Tunde said, his voice breaking. "Like Mama Ijeoma." Days later, the academy held its first graduation ceremony, a simple affair under a canvas tent decorated with palm leaves and chalk-painted signs. The students wore white shirts donated by local churches. The stage was a few wooden planks, and the audience sat on borrowed chairs. Yet it felt grander than any event Tunde had ever attended in the glass towers of Maitama. Pastor Chukwu opened the ceremony with prayer. "These children," he said, his voice booming through the microphone, "are not born of wealth but of grace. Their education is built from a mother's tears and a son's repentance. Let this place remind us knowledge is sacred when it is washed in humility." Applause filled the tent. The children sang songs of thanks, their voices bright and pure. When Uche stepped forward to recite a poem he had written, silence fell again. "A mother's hands are rivers, they wash the world and leave no stain. We walk their path forever, through joy, through loss, through rain." When he finished, even the older women in the audience wiped their eyes. Tunde rose slowly from his seat, taking the microphone. "When I was young," he began, "I thought success meant escaping this place. But I've learned that success isn't measured by how far you run. It's measured by how many you lift when you return. He looked at the crowd, his voice trembling. I once let pride kill the love that raised me. But now through these children, through every lesson taught in this humble classroom, my mother lives again. Her hands built this school even from the grave. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was the quiet, reverent kind, filled with tears and smiles. After the ceremony, Chioma approached him, holding a new plaque she had commissioned. The wood was smooth, the letters carved deep, Mama Ijeoma Academy, where every lesson begins with love. Tunde ran his fingers over the words, his eyes misting. It's perfect. Chioma hesitated. I want to thank you, she said softly. For letting me atone. You don't owe me thanks, he replied. You're doing what she would have wanted, turning pain into care. She smiled faintly. Do you think she forgives me? He looked toward the sky where the sunset glowed orange and purple. I think she's the one who brought you here. Months later, the Academy's reputation spread beyond Abuja. Non-profit organizations visited. Newspapers ran stories titled, From Tragedy to Triumph, the son who built his mother's dream. Donations poured in enough to add 2 more classrooms and a dormitory for orphan girls. But Tunde never let it change him. Each morning he still swept the courtyard himself, and each night he sat by the altar beside the lagoon whispering prayers into the wind. One night, as he prepared to close the classroom, he found a letter slipped under the door. It was from Chioma. Tunde. Every day I teach these children, I see a reflection of the woman I destroyed and the one who saved me. I'm leaving tomorrow to start another branch of the school in Enugu. I hope to serve more mothers there. Thank you for teaching me that forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a lifetime of work. With peace, Chioma. He folded the letter, carefully smiling through the ache. Go, Chioma, he whispered. Spread her light. Years later, Mama Ijeoma Academy had grown into a network of small schools across Nigeria. But in the original building at Jabi, a single photograph still hung on the wall, the same one of Mama smiling softly, her hands folded as if in prayer. Beneath it, a new inscription read, Clean floors fade, clean hearts endure. On the anniversary of her death, Tunde stood once more at the water's edge. The children gathered around him. He opened the tin box one last time and released its contents, a handful of white flower petals, into the breeze. They floated over the water, catching the morning light. He smiled. Mama, you said to leave a chair for the poor. I built a school instead. I hope it's enough. As the petals drifted away, a gentle gust of wind brushed his face, warm and familiar. And in that quiet moment, Tunde heard her voice, soft, tender, eternal. You cleaned it, my son. Not the floor, but your heart. The wind carried her whisper across the water, through the laughter of children, through the walls of the school built from sorrow and grace. And as the sun rose higher over Abuja, its golden light shimmered on the roof of Mama Ijeoma Academy, proof that some stories don't end with death, they bloom into legacy.